Good Shabbos. This week is a special parsha for me this year, or I should say a special set of parshiot. Today is Shabbat Vayakhel-Pekudei HaChodesh. Shabbat Vayakhel-Pekudei HaChodesh. It is a double parsha. Some years have more Shabbatot than other years, so there is a need. We need enough parshas to cover the longest years, and on those years when there are less Shabbatot, the extra parshas have to be doubled up with one next to it. So we are reading from two parshas this Shabbat, Vayakhel and Pekudei. At the same time, the Shabbat which comes before the beginning of the month of Nisan, when Passover falls, is called Shabbat HaChodesh, meaning Shabbat of the month, because it has an extra Torah reading from the book of Exodus, where we read that this coming month, when Passover falls, is the first of all months on the calendar. All this is by way of explaining that today's particular Parsha combination does not come together most of the time. Some years, Shabbat Vayakhel is read separately from Pekudei. Some years, Vayakhel and Pekudei are read together. And then only on some other years are Vayakhel and Pekudei also Shabbat HaChodesh. So it is a relatively rare combination of readings. And it is also the set of readings that fell on the day of my bar mitzvah. So it is effectively my bar mitzvah parsha. But like someone who was born on February 29th, most years I never get to see it. So I am very happy that today is Shabbat Vayakhel-Pekudei HaChodesh. Now, it may strike you that this is a strange thing for someone to be happy about. But I am often drawn to and often think about and even celebrate strange things. Those of you who have known me over the years already know that. I'm often thinking about strange things and am lost in strange things, so that when people ask me what I've been up to, it's sometimes hard for me to tell them what I've been thinking about. I go through the world thinking about different theoretical things. My predecessor, Rabbi Chava Pell, once said to me, "Carl, you rarely ever come down to earth. You're usually floating up in the air somewhere." So it is. I agree. And so this week, with this set of readings before us, I have been thinking a lot about prayer. And because of that, also, as I believe I said 2 weeks ago, I have been thinking a lot about the Siddur. I have been thinking that prayer is a lot about change. Prayer is a lot about changing us, transformation. Even more, prayer is about changing us into an answer to our own prayers, transforming ourselves into an answer to our own prayers. To understand this, we have to think of prayer as a process. Prayer affects us, and it is not the prayers that we say that do the job. Rather, it is the praying that we do which has the effect. The praying changes us. I compare this to a walk I once took along the walls of Jerusalem. I walked along the top of the walls of the old city of Jerusalem, from the Jaffa Gate to the Damascus Gate. And when I reached the Damascus Gate and was standing on top of it, looking out over the city in the direction of the Temple Mount, framed by the Christian quarter rising on one hill to the right and the Muslim quarter rising on a hill to the left, I was struck by the great beauty of the scene before me. I also knew that I was looking over an area which, although very much in dispute, was the setting for so much which had shaped the tradition which flows down to me, to us. I somehow understood that this unexpected experience of looking over Jerusalem had changed me. I would not be the same after this experience as I was before. In the same way, prayer or praying is a process, an experience, which has the potential to change us. We do not and should not necessarily come out of prayer in the same state of mind or with the same insights or understanding as we had when we went in. The praying affects our perceptions of things. The same is true of any religious ritual practice. Ritual practice must also be understood as a process with the potential to be transformative, just as much as the experience of any art form can possibly be transformative. In putting on tefillin, for example, we utilize an ancient practice to bind an ancient heritage to our bodies and to our souls, physically as well as emotionally. So too when we daven, when we pray, we use ancient words to express what we see today in the world, because these words are a part of what has shaped us. But the words in themselves are not the whole thing. Not that which is said, but rather the saying itself is of great significance. And the words are also significant. In saying the words of our ancestors, we are connecting ourselves to a long chain of traditions and insights that have been recognized before us and have contributed to who we are. In praying with these words, we are reviewing what we know or think we know, or what our ancestors thought they knew about God and the world. We are pressing our own souls against the imprint left by the encountering of our ancestors with their sense of divinity. As we say these words, we should be pondering each word, critically analyzing them, discovering the truths in them, letting ourselves be overwhelmed with wonder at what we know and what we don't know. Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, we exclaim in our prayers. How great are the works of your creation, O Lord. In wisdom have you made them all. All these words we recite as part of a process of discovering God, discovering the nature of our universe, the nature of our hearts. V'ha'er enenu b'toratecha, enlighten our eyes to your Torah. Let us learn and let us know and let us teach and let us do. These are the pleas of our morning prayers. So we approach each service throughout the year. As we approach each service, we should be asking ourselves, what am I going to be learning here? What am I going to see here that I didn't see before? How am I going to be different after this experience from what I was before? What questions are you bringing to and asking in today's service? After all, how can you expect an answer if you don't bring a question? I have also come to believe that in addition to being a source of healing and hope and inner strength, prayer is also a means of discernment, a means of gaining insight and clarity of understanding. So, for example, we read in the Torah and in the Shema, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your being. And these words which I command you this day shall be on your heart. I read this, when you love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your being, then these words which I command you this day shall appear on your heart. If we connect to God, if we love God enough with all of our being, then our hearts will direct us to the mitzvah. But how do we read what is written on our hearts? And how do we know that we love God enough or are connected to godliness enough so that the words on our hearts are worthy of being followed? Well, for one, we need to study Torah and we need to daven. We need to keep ourselves receptive, keep our heart sensitive and open to the needs and the calls we encounter around us. We need to be open to the challenge presented to us, especially by the words of the Siddur, the prayer book, which can be seen as a source of guidance for the heart. And we have to regularly find a moment to withdraw from the chaos and commotion of the world to hear and to listen to the voice of our heart, in a sense, to realize what it is we perhaps already know. From this, it seems to me, it can be said that God, or at least God's Torah, is what we encounter within ourselves when we are involved in the world. We are all already involved in the world. We need to make sure that we are sensitive enough for the happenings of the world to make an impression upon us. And we need to take the time to realize what is going on inside of us. When we daven from the Siddur, we are first challenging ourselves to be sensitive and concerned. Secondly, clearing our minds of the commotion of daily life, so that thirdly, we can read what is on our hearts and perhaps even name that thought or feeling using the traditional words of our prayer book. You may think that this is not a traditional Jewish view of prayer, but the late scholar Louis Jacobs, in his book Hasidic Prayer, says something similar when he writes that this Hasidic attitude towards prayer is an exercise in self-transcendence. He writes that petitionary prayer in particular is not, in fact, a request to God to satisfy human needs, but to satisfy God's own needs. Petitionary prayer is for the sake of God's presence, of the Shekhinah. He writes, when humans lack anything, the lack is in the Shekhinah, the lack is in God's presence. Since if humans lack something, then God's purpose remains unfulfilled. The Chassid, it is therefore taught, should not ask for his own needs to be satisfied because they are his own needs, but because ultimately they are God's needs. One implication of this for us is the sense that we do not say prayer in order to coax, convince, or persuade some all-powerful, all-present divine being to act in a certain way. We recite prayers, even and especially put prayers physically into words in order to transform ourselves spiritually and physically into an expression of divine presence. Not that we become God, either individually or collectively, but that godliness can be felt through us, so that we align ourselves physically, emotionally, and intellectually to godly purpose. In praying for health, healing, redemption, justice, and compassion in this world, we are knitting together community that will present to the world healing, redemption, justice, and compassion. We become the prayer. We are the prayer, and the prayer itself is godliness. Which brings us to this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha, we read at the end of the book of Exodus as follows. Then, when Moses finished building the tabernacle, then the cloud covering the tent of meeting and the presence of the Eternal filled the tabernacle. Moses was not able to enter into the tent of meeting because the cloud rested upon it, and the presence of the Eternal filled the tabernacle. Whenever the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the children of Israel went onward throughout all their journeys. But if the cloud was not taken up, then they did not journey until the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of the Eternal was over the tabernacle by day, and there was fire in it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout all their journeys. In this little section of Torah, at the end of the book of Exodus, which is the section of the Torah that I read at my bar mitzvah, the tabernacle is completed. The tabernacle, the communal focal point of God's presence in the community. And the people themselves have created this tabernacle, this focal point of God's presence. And they enter into it, and God's presence, and they perceive God's presence in it. They find direction through it. As we recall from the earlier section of the Torah, God says, let them build me a sanctuary and I shall dwell among them. So they enter into this structure, this devotional structure, and they perceive this pillar of cloud by day and pillar of fire by night that is letting them know how to direct themselves and that they are not alone. The place and role of the tabernacle in Jewish life eventually becomes the temple. The tabernacle becomes a semi-permanent installation in different parts of the land of Israel, and then it is taken to Jerusalem, and then the temple is built and plays the role of the tabernacle, and then the temple is destroyed, and what replaces the temple, in effect, is our prayers, our liturgical life, our siddur, the blessings we say when we stand up and say the Amidah and we're facing Jerusalem. The sanctuary, the synagogue becomes a mikdash ma'at. Wherever we're saying these prayers, we are entering into the tabernacle. Prayer becomes the structured way we build the tabernacle within our community. And in prayer, we clear our hearts and minds in order to hear the direction appearing in our hearts. We get a glimpse of that pillar of cloud by day and that pillar of fire by night leading us forward. This section of Torah at the end of the book of Exodus is about our lives of prayer. It is about our growth, our travels, and our discernment as a Jewish people. For us, the Siddur itself becomes a tool for this type of discernment, for us to use it to build that sanctuary among us, out of our lives and out of our community, which is why I often say that the Siddur is the most important Jewish mystical book hiding in plain sight. Jewish mystics use the word voice to describe God's sustaining presence flowing into the world. The world is sustained because God's presence is flowing constantly into the world, like sound through a shofar, unbroken sound, voice. It's we human beings who take that sound, who take that voice, who take that flow, and with our deeds, shape it into short symbolic units. We take that voice and shape it into words. So our lives are words of Torah. Our deeds become words, and they can become either good words or bad words, depending on our actions. We as human beings have the capacity to create the words, that is to fashion the deeds by which the divine voice is shaped in the world. We live out Torah, as we live out Torah, we are shaping that voice into words of Torah, becoming Torah. Prayer is the act of us voicing words so that we may strive to shape God's audible voice into Torah words, so that we can become the word. If our prayers are answered, it is because we have become the words of Torah that the world needs to hear, that we need to hear and to be. I'm going to chant the last 3 verses of this, as we do when we read the end of a book, and we say, Chazak, Chazak, v'nit chazek. Chazak, Chazak, v'nit chazek. Strength, strength, and be strengthened. May we each find in these words and in our prayers the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud present in our midst as we pray. U'he'alohot he'anahan me'al hamishkan yisu v'nei Yisrael b'chol ma'asehem v'im lo ya'aleh ha'anan v'lo yisu ad yom he'alotoho ki anahan Adonai al mishkan yomam ve'esh tieh layla bo le'nei kol beyom Yisrael le'nei kol beit Yisrael bechol maasehem. Chazak, chazak, venit chazek. We say Kiddush